Now, when I made $1 million in 1 year, that's when I really felt like, wow, this is the culmination of all of the sacrifice, all of the just me being diligent, me being focused. And it's finally come to a point to where it's paid off. Like this is real. Like you can work for yourself with God as your boss. You can work alone with zero staff, and you can earn 7 figures without leaving your house if you tap in to the message for you and your brand. And money does not have to be your motive.
Welcome back to another episode of Your Visionary Podcast. I'm your host, Christian Brown, also known as Visionary CJ. And today we have a special episode for a couple of reasons. Not only is this episode 50, which marks the end of season 3, but we also have one of my mentors on today to just share his story and share his insight with you all. And so I'm going to give you a quick background, quick bio of him, but of course he'll give us a lot more. And so his name is Tony Gaskins. He's a best-selling author, the founder of MyMentor.life. He's a millionaire relationship and business coach. And most importantly to me, the thing that I'm inspired by the most is that he's a faithful husband and the father of 2 sons. And so without further ado, I want to bring my brother on. Tony, what's up, man?
Christian, thank you for having me.
Yes, sir, man. Thank you for joining in today. I know we're going to talk about a lot of good stuff, but ultimately just have fun and help people in the process. So I'm looking forward to doing that.
Yes, sir.
Awesome. So before we really dive into it, I just wanted to remind everybody what Your Visionary Podcast is all about. This is the one and only podcast intentionally designed to push you forward towards the vision you've created for your life. And if you don't have a vision for your life, this is the podcast to help you structure a vision to become the person that God created you to be. And with every episode, my goal is to tell real, authentic, and purposeful stories, not cap, but true stories to help you create a vision for your life. You get closer to your purpose, a purpose where you're having a positive impact on those around you and on the world. And so to start this off, brother, I kind of want to hear from you, man. What do you feel like your purpose on earth is at this moment?
Well, I feel like my purpose, just like everybody's purpose, is to teach as we learn. A lot of times we go through life and we make these mistakes and we pick up lessons and we learn it the hard way. And then we feel insignificant and we don't want to share it with anyone else. But I just started sharing the lessons that life taught me. And what I realized, it was a lot of people that needed to learn it from someone else's perspective. So my purpose became just being an example, being a light, living in a real way, and then helping others based on the lessons I learned from my mistakes.
That's dope right there, man. And I like that a lot. And I'm interested in hearing, I pretty much already know, but for the audience, I'm interested in hearing kind of like the journey that you took, from kind of when you were kind of in a lost phase, figuring things out, to, being a light, like you mentioned. Now.
Well, I remember when I was about 7 years old, I used to always tell my dad, hey, I'm going to the NFL and I'm going to be a pro athlete. And then around 10, I remember having this encounter with God. My parents had got saved around when I was 6. And I was riding in the back seat and I was just praying and I was crying. And I probably was 10 or 11 years old. And I had an encounter with God and I just could see that I was going to have a platform, but I thought it was going to be through sports. Mm-hmm. But one thing that I didn't foresee was the trials, the temptation, everything that would come to me. So at 15, I lost my virginity. At 15, I went to jail for stealing from the mall. Then at 18, I went to college on a full football scholarship, but also at around 18 and a half, maybe 19, I started selling drugs. because I was injured in football and I felt insignificant. I was like, man, I'm not the man anymore. Because in high school, I was in the paper every day. I was being featured. And so I was used to being the man. And then I got to college and I'm like, just another guy. And so I was like, what else can give me some attention that can help me, stand out and be cool? And I went to my cousin who was full time in the streets and had been so for, some years. By that time, he probably had been in the streets a decade. And I said, man, I need to make some money. And he told me not to do it. But he was like, you're a grown man. I know you're going to ultimately do what you want to do. So if you're going to get into the streets, I definitely want you to be, up under me versus with somebody else. And I just started doing it, trying to be cool. And that took me through from probably 18 to 23. 21 years old, my coach kicked me off the team. And I had to move back home, Central Florida. And I got in college in Tampa. And I still was in the streets hustling. I still was trying to work regular jobs too, because it was this battle. But then I met my wife, and ultimately it was my wife telling me, you cannot be with me if you're going to be in the streets. And I had to make a tough decision. But by that time, it was 23 years old. And that's when I decided to make a change and use my gifts and start promoting, my writing.
Yeah, yeah. So all this time you had the gift of writing inside of you, feel like, but you just didn't.
I had been a writer. I found out I was a writer in the 4th grade when we had to write an essay, and I wrote the essay. And my thing was always writing from the heart, but I wrote in a way it was kind of poetic, because the only book I read growing up was the Holy Bible. And the Bible is poetic based on the English language, because it's not, it doesn't originate from English. Right. So when you read the King James version, it sounds kind of poetic. So that's how I wrote, because that was my reference. And my 4th grade teacher, she came to me, and she came to me and she said, Tony, can I read your essay to the entire class? And I said, yeah, sure. So she read it. And then she went to my parents and she said, your son, he's not normal. His writing ability is not normal. He's different. I want to nominate him for the gifted class. And they were like, okay, cool, put him in the gifted class. So I got moved from the regular class to the gifted class, which was just a little small class. It was a few of us in there. And I was in there from 5th grade to 7th grade until I asked my parents, could I get out and be back, with in the regular class? Because I just didn't like being in the class, with this small group. And I was the only person like me that was in there. It was other people of color, but I was the only jock, athlete. I was a star athlete in basketball and football. I was the number 1 scorer in basketball, and I was number 1 running back in football. And then here I was in this class with other kids who the boys didn't even play sports.
Right. That's interesting, man. And it makes me think about my own story and some of my friends' story, and just how it's kind of uncomfortable being in a place where it's we're the only. Right. And I think that leads us, or as men, to going towards the path that we see a lot of other men going towards, right? Which is sports, drugs, things like that. Why do you feel like that's the case? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I feel like it's just a part of, human nature. You want companionship, you want company, camaraderie. You don't want to be alone on the narrow road. You want to be a part of the party on the broad road. And because excellence and greatness, those things are lonely. It's not in at the top of your game. It's lonely. People say, oh, it don't have to be lonely at the top if you bring people with you, but you can't force anybody to change. You can't force anybody to sacrifice and to grow. So truth be told, it's lonely. And so I think we a lot of times want to gravitate toward what the masses are doing, what everybody else is doing, so that we can fit in, not realizing that we were each born to stand out. And that's what I feel like it was for me, just trying to be normal.
Yeah, that's real. So would you say at 23, when you decided to be faithful to your wife, that's when you decided to take the narrow route?
That is, it was like faithful in the sense of, letting go of the street life. I had already changed my life as a man as far as being a womanizer when I met her at 21. Then we got married when I was 23 and like 2 weeks. And so I had made up my mind that I was going to, for the first time in my life, not be a womanizer. And so I became 100% faithful to her in the relationship. But in my personal life, my decisions, I went back to the streets after I got my first royalty check because I wrote a book in February of 2007. And then I got married in March of 2007. Mm-hmm. And then I got my first royalty check like May or June. And that's when I went back to my cousin and, got some work to get back out there because I'm like, man, this royalty check was $320. I'm like, I can't live off this. And I was working a job making probably $8.50, $9 an hour. But my son was in an intensive care unit. So I used that as an excuse to get back in the streets to say, oh, I need to make more money than what the job is paying me. And that's when my wife, I came home one day and she left. And she was like, if you're going to be in them streets after you promised me that you would never go back, I'm gone. And I was like, wow, if she willing to leave, because she didn't have a job right then. We lived together. We were married. So I'm like, if she willing to walk away at our lowest, then this woman ain't scared of nothing. So in order for me to be her husband and for me to be in my son's life, like every day in the home, like I want to be, I got to make a decision. And so it was her influence that pushed me to that point.
Dang, that's dope. And then once you got to that point, what was the next steps for you after that?
After that, now this is where a lot of people don't, get this. This the point right here that most men that I see try to change. This the point that most men don't get to, and most humans, period. So what I did is I took drastic measures. I called my best friend from kindergarten, and I called my cousin who I was working up under the streets, who was my plug. I called both of them and I said, hey, to my friend from kindergarten, I said, hey, bro, I'm not going to the club no more. I'm really going to be off the scene. I'm finna lock in, focus on my marriage, focus on my book, and just push like that. He like, dang, bro, you gonna cut me off? Like what I did? Like you can't hang out with the boys no more? And I was like, no. And then I called my cousin. I said, hey, cuz, I'm out the streets, man. I sold that last little bit of work. I'm done. And, you ain't gonna hear from me too much. Cuz, you finna cut us off? Cuz, you cutting us off? Why you doing us like that? I was like, cuz, listen, I got to do this, just for my wife, for my family. Man, she don't understand. Man, you need to tell her she gonna understand when you bring that money home. And, I tried to use that line because he had told me that line. I tried to use it. That didn't work. And so then this is what I did. I got online and I Googled and I heard this guy named Zig Ziglar. And I was like, that's an interesting name. I'm like, somebody, mama named their child Zig Ziglar. And so I Googled the name and it was a white guy, from Mississippi. And so he was country, he was Christian, and no college degree. And so I started listening to his podcast, and this man talked on life, love, and business all across the board. And he had over 100 podcast episodes, and I was working 8 hours a day. So I put that podcast on and I listened to it all day long. If I could have that earbud in my ear for 24 hours a day, I had it in there. I went to sleep with it. When I was at work, I had, how on Apple back then you have these. So on Apple, you got two of them. So I would have one in like this, and I would have one out. So this one that was out, I could hear my coworkers, I could hear my clients. I worked in a group home, and that other one, it was playing. So I learned stuff that I had never heard from somebody else's perspective. And then he led me to, Ryan Tracy, Jim Rohn, then bumped into Earl Nightingale, C.S. Lewis, and then the modern people like Tony Robbins and Les Brown. And so I listen to everybody, but I listen to Zig Ziglar the most. And that new knowledge, for every one thing I learned, it erased one thing I thought I knew. And so I literally renewed my mind by intense, self-development. And that's one thing that I feel like most people, they'll read a book, but then they might not read another one for months. They'll listen to a podcast, one episode, but they don't listen to it 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day. And so that's how I went from the absolute worst in relationships and life to growing into who I am today.
Yeah. Dang, man. I love that because it it kind of validates a point that I often say, which is what you listen to, what you read, what you say, affects how you think and how you live your life. And then also thinking about environment, right? Because just my personal story, my first time getting arrested in college, and I tried to change my mindset without changing my environment. And so I went back down that same road that I was in before until I just took the steps to get up and just leave my friends, leave my habitat, and just go into the uncomfortable space. So I love that, the same thing happened in your story. That's dope.
Mm-hmm.
So once you really started taking in this personal development knowledge and, getting insight on business and life and love, how did you see your personal life just develop from there?
Well, for one, it was like I went into this space that I feel like every man knows how to make a woman fall in love. Like we all can do it. And it took me like my first 2 years of marriage to really, get over myself and get past ego. But then I went into this space of like making my wife fall in love, like just really being the perfect man, just listening to her and hearing her, not arguing with her, being extremely emotionally intelligent, and just like washing her with love. Because from me being a adult boy, you have a certain, persona to be in the streets. So I kind of was like savage hearted, and I was like, it was the kick the cat syndrome. So if my cousin, who is my upline, my plug, if he yell at me and curse me out for something I did wrong, then I'm yelling at my wife. And so it was kind of like that same intensity that I had on the football field in college. I took that into my relationship too, trying to combat and conquer. And then with my wife, I was the same way. Coming from the streets, I was real direct, real rude, condescending, not raising my voice, but just cutting with my words like a knife. And so I had to go into a space of understanding that my strength is in my gentleness, and that it doesn't make me less of a man to cater to my wife, to speak to her with respect, to not talk down to her, to not be, rude and condescending or short, and to allow her to keep her voice, have her voice, keep her righteous mind. And so I went into that space, and that changed everything in my life because it activated God's favor in my life. And just as a man on the business side, when you're focusing on being faithful to what God has placed you, over your life, your marriage, your household, then you learn self-discipline. You learn self-discipline, and you also get clarity because you cut out all the mess, you cut out all the noise. So with that clarity, I was able to hear clearly what it was that I needed to produce and to create in the world. And that allowed me to hear from my heart and then share that online. So that is what grew my following, from 0 to millions of people online.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So how long was that process for you? Right. So you started at 23. So what age did you finally like step into that person fully, like you're going to be fully faithful, fully disciplined, and, just a full servant to your wife?
I probably was 25 is when at the end of 25 is when I made a decision. But I probably was 29 or 30 before I really got all the way in, maybe around 28 is when the process started of just like listening and like watching her with love. But before then, I was kind of normal, on a scale of 0 to 10, I probably was like a 6.5 or a 7 in the husband, as being a husband.
Yeah.
And then I made the decision to say, hey, I gotta be better. And so it probably really kicked in. Like I still had wandering eyes. I still struggled with lust and I still, was tempted. But it was like by the end of 25, I say, you know what? I have tried God, like tested God in the sense of trying to take my grace for granted for too long in my life. It's time for me to turn over a new leaf and to live right, to do the right thing. Because my wife, she wasn't perfect, she was adapting to me. So she was looking to see like, hey, do I need to plan an exit strategy? Do I need to start talking to other men? Like, do I need to keep me some in my back pocket in case he take a stupid pill? So she was in that mind space, she wasn't just sitting there like sitting duck, just letting me do whatever and talk however. She was mapping and making a plan of escape. And so when I flipped it, it took her a while to realize like, whoa, this real. Like he changed. So I would say between 28 and 30 is when that real shift, on a deep level started to happen and stuff started to take off for me. I started working with the NBA and the National Basketball Players Association at 26. And then at 27, I got a call from NFL team to work with their players. And then at 29, I became an intercontinental speaker. I spoke in Johannesburg, South Africa. And so from there, it showed me like the more I locked in and I focused and I was aligned for my purpose and to be able to receive the blessings, the better my life went.
Man, that topic of the decision just really convicted me. It's funny because I don't know if you remember, but like when LeBron had chose to go to Miami, they like made a huge like broadcast calling it the decision, right? But I feel like just as Christian men, we need something like that to really just signify how important the decision is, and I'm kind of interested like selfishly in just that, like the decision. What does that look like internally? And then like, what does it take to get there?
Now, say that part, it froze. You said you kind of interested selfishly about, are you talking about the decision? What did you say? What does it look like?
Yeah, the decision. What does that look like?
Well, to be honest with you, for every person, it may look different, but to me, it's kind of like where you come to a fork in the road and you have to sit with yourself and you have to talk to God and you have to really just consult inside, as Zig Ziglar called it, an interview, not an interview like for a job, but the interview, the inner you, and really just talk. And so I had to say to myself, you know what? I have taken grace for granted so long because I could play back scenarios in the streets where I was supposed to get shot or I was supposed to get robbed or moments where I could have been killed. And I'm like, I didn't realize that God had spared me. And I had played back scenarios in my mind of so many times where I should have had an illegitimate child. I should have caught HIV. Or it hurt even herpes. I should have caught even the minimalist of STD. But I was clean and I was like, wow, this has to be grace. But if I keep taking this grace for granted, eventually it will no longer be granted. Like eventually you catch a STD if you keep sleeping around.
Right.
Eventually you get shot or you get robbed or you get killed if you stay in the streets. Eventually the grace runs out. And so I had to realize if I don't make a change, I'm going to reap what I'm sowing. And so I had prayed my last prayer of, Lord, please let me get through this. Lord, please let me get through this. And I said, you know what? God does not force us to do anything. We got to make a decision and we have to do the right thing and pray for the strength and the wisdom, the clarity to know what we should be doing. But ultimately, we have to put the right foot in front of the left foot, and we got to be committed to the right lifestyle. And so I just consulted myself one night in the wee hours of the night. It probably was, it started at 27 after I got robbed, but it didn't just happen overnight to where the next day I'm this perfect individual. So it took some time, but that decision was really just, it was me. It wasn't with a mentor. It wasn't with a life coach. It was the decision that I came to the realization that if I don't change, one day I'm gonna lose it all.
One thing I want to make sure that I mention, why I have you on a podcast is just like the story of how we got connected, right? And so I can share from my perspective, because once I graduated college, I was kind of in a place where I wanted to just go full time with entrepreneurship, but I also wasn't bringing in a revenue to take care of me, right? So I had to just resort and get a 9-to-5. And one of the things that I wanted to make sure I did with that income was to invest in myself, invest in a way to just get knowledge from somebody who's already been through some of the things that I might go through. Right. And so I was doing some research, even talked to a few people about just what it takes to get a business coach or mentor and what you should look for. And I kept hearing, like, find somebody who is doing something that you would want to do, who has been through similar things as you, and then pay them for their advice. Right. And so I had first heard you speak on a podcast, and you were talking about your story. And then instantly I was like, okay, that's almost exactly my story, And so I just went on your website. I didn't even know you offer coaching, but I went on your website, saw that you offer coaching on mymentor.life, and then signed up. And the price was, out of my range, but I just felt something in my spirit that told me the investment would be worth it, right? And so I invested the money, had the conversation, and then from there I did like 2, 3, or maybe 4 more sessions, and then we just built the relationship. And now I'm blessed to call you a mentor. And I got you on my podcast, which is dope because you don't even do interviews.
Hey, and I almost backed out today, but I said, man, I gotta keep my word to this young man. I was like, Lord, I do not feel like doing no interview. But and also what you left out too was now not mentor, but business partner. And because it's so rare. I cannot think of another example of a young man of color that's 24 years old. You just turned 25.
Yeah.
That's 24 when you hired me, and you paying $300 an hour.
Yeah.
And after your third session, you had paid $900, or maybe it was the fourth session. And I randomly mentioned that I wanted to have like a Black-owned media company. And you like, man, that would be dope. And then I was like, I know I ain't got the time to do it. So I'm like, hey, would you want to head it up? And I just was throwing it out there. And something told me that you would be down for it. Mm-hmm. And you said, yeah, let's do it. So ladies and gentlemen, go to blemish.com. That's BLIMISH.com, blemish.com, mm-hmm. where we will be sharing self-development lessons, tips, tools, and it's free of charge to the individuals. You just on the list and you getting motivation right in your inbox. And that's something that Christian and I, we linked up, and I booked a cabin, in Georgia, and I had one of my other mentees, Caleb, come. And we had a chef there, and we spent a few days and just fleshed this out. Christian came up with the name Blemish right there in Georgia. And we created this just to be able to find another way to impact and inspire and to teach as we learn, to lift as we climb. And the lesson for that is I don't start a business with anybody. I don't start a business with anybody. But what happened was, unless I've known them for more than 4 years, but what happened was you invested in yourself. And I said, this right here says something about this young man. I know nobody's perfect. Everybody gonna make mistakes. Everybody has made mistakes. But for a young man to spend $300 an hour to talk to me on the phone is something in life that he wants, that he's trying to go after. And there's not going to be a ceiling on his life. Because if you have the mindset to invest in yourself on that level, you destined for greatness and you cannot fail. That's just universal law. That's just the way God has set it in motion, that what you sow will determine what you reap. And so just by that alone, because so many people, when it comes down to a sacrifice, because see, an investment ain't just money, it's sacrificing your time, it's sacrificing your lust, your flesh, all of those things. So, but when you, as I know how much money means to men in general, because women, they're different about monetary investments. A woman invests quick. Men typically invest in stuff that don't appreciate, jewelry, cars, stuff like that. So for a young man to have the wherewithal to invest in himself, I said, Lord, I got to make sure he get a thousand-fold return on his investment. I got to make sure. So that means I got to go in business with this young man. Now, hey, listen, ain't nobody else trying to hire me talking about, oh, I'm starting a business. No, that's old. No, that's old. I ain't that. No, it just was. That was the appointed time and season, and it happened. And I'm praying it's a blessing. It's gonna be a blessing to you.
Yeah, likewise, brother. Likewise, man. And it's so many other lessons wrapped up in there too, because one quote that I love is just that it goes, success is when opportunity meets preparation. Right. And before I even hired you for a coach, like I said, 2 or 3 years prior, I was listening to your interview and it convicted me. And I just kept listening to it. And then you did a book signing in Atlanta. And so I pulled up, bought your book. It was like $35 or something. But I was like, it's worth it because I got the chance to just meet you, face to face, shake your hand. And I don't know if you remember, but I told you, I was like, brother, we're going to work together one day. And you just smiled and it was like, yeah, you okay, right? But I just knew, I was getting closer and closer to just that opportunity, right? And when the opportunity came, I was already prepared, and then boom, it happened. So I'm grateful, and I'm hoping it just helps a lot of people. So
amazing.
So I appreciate it, my brother. Awesome, bro. So it's funny, man, because one thing that I really admire about you is that you really built your brand almost by yourself, in terms of just not having a big team, not having a lot of mentors, but really just like getting them out the mud. And I think there's like a disconnect, now. I think a lot of people think that you have to have a team in order to be successful. Right. But then you also see those stories of people who don't, they just, put in the work consistently, and make it. And so kind of what was your journey, with that, with building your brand, and your business by yourself?
Well, to be honest with you, I feel like a lot of times when people say, oh, you got to have this big team and you got to have people, all these people to make it. I think a lot of times we want that just to feel like a boss. And yes, you can have people and it can help you and you can scale and you can grow, but you also increase your liability. You also have to now micromanage other people, and other people's decisions can negatively impact your message and your brand. And I don't feel like the creator intended us to be, as far as messengers, to be this, multi member company, like with all of these staff, because everybody has their own message and everybody has an avenue to get their message out. So if you're working for me, then your purpose is stifled. Your message is not being heard if you're working for me and you pushing my message forward. But what about your message? What about what you're here to do? And it ain't just to serve me. And so that's the thing, is like, and then too, the people at the top a lot of times don't care about their workers' purpose. Then they say, oh, well, their purpose is to serve me, or their purpose could be to be my assistant. That's not their purpose, because that don't bring glory. That don't bring glory to God. Them being told what to do and being, cussed out when they don't do something right. And so I'll be honest with you, I work alone, and I've been doing this since 2007. It's 2021. So it's been 14 years. I don't have a single staff member. I have been blessed to be in multiple seven figures, to earn multiple seven figures a year, and with no staff. But it's the wisdom and the clarity that God gave me to show me that, listen, you don't need all of this staff to share your message, because Twitter is free. YouTube is free. Instagram is free. So all you need is independent contractors who can do what you cannot do. So, hey, you over here, you build websites. What do you charge? $1,000. Okay, here's $1,000 to build TonyGaskins.com. You over here, you're a developer. What do you charge to build MyMentor.life? Okay, here's what you charge to build MyMentor.life. Hey, you over here, you built this software that's called, whatever. What do you charge? What would you charge me to do GaskinsUniversity.com on your software? What do you charge for me to use TonyGaskinsAcademy.com on your software? So none of these people are my staff. These are independent contractors who they created a software, or they have a certain skill, and I can hire them to do a job. And then I could go about my business. They go about their business. If I need them again, I bring them back in. But then if they have poor integrity, boom, I can just let them go. And I don't have to worry about me having uprooted their entire life. They moved to my city. They're working for me. They're on my health plan. And then I got to fire them, and they got to start all over, because every single person I work with is an independent contractor. And I tell them, listen, you eat what you kill. Do not let me be your only source of income, because one source of income ain't going to do it in this day and time. Because if you only have one source of income, at any day, you could be fired. At any day, your whole life could change. I was talking to a gentleman who he's in the development space. He develops websites. And he said in the pandemic, he lost 80% of his revenue. And then now he needs to generate revenue. And so I look at that and I say, listen, okay, I can't be anybody's meal ticket. I don't want anybody depending solely on me to feed their family. And so that's why I really have no interest in having this big company and being this boss and saying, oh, you my assistant, you my publicist. I've never paid a publicist a dime. What I did is I got on a free conference call by a man who he teach you how to get publicity. And I got on that free conference call, and on that free conference call, he said, there's a thing called a timely pitch. And he said, what a timely pitch is you look in the media and you see something that happens in the media. And if you have wrote about that in your book, or if that coincides with your story, that's when you go to all of the media outlets, go to their website, and you make a timely pitch, and you tie in what happened in the media with what happened in your story. And they will reach out to you because now you're relevant to them and they need you. So when Chris Brown and Rihanna happened, I had gone through a very, diluted version of that when I was 19 years old in college, to where me and my girlfriend at the time had an incident in the dorm room. There was no black eyes. There was no blood. There was no police, but it was a physical altercation, a physical incident. I took and I wrote into Oprah and I said, hey, and I stretched the truth a little bit in a sense to embellish to get their attention. So I wrote it like poetry style. It came back to bite me in the butt because they made me read the email that I pitched in on the air. But I pitched to Oprah and the producer called me and said, we want you to come on and tell your story. But I needed to do that so that I could then be a servant. But I had to expose myself and take my skeletons out of the closet, put clothes on them, and send them into the field to work. And then right after that, I did the pitch to Tyra Banks show. Then right after that, I did the pitch to the 700 Club. So in consecutive months, I was on 3 globally televised shows with no publicist. And I remember talking to a publicist who had been doing publicity for people for 20 years, and none of her clients had been called to tell their story on Oprah. And she said to me, Tony, how did you do it? Did you talk to this person? Did you talk to her? I said, no, I didn't talk to them people. I went to Oprah.com and I clicked on contact us and I clicked on tell us your story. And I told my story every single day for 2 years until eventually my story was relevant in the media and then they called me. And so I say that to say it's always a way to build your brand. And I see other speakers who have managers, assistants, and all this team, and they don't necessarily have more reach or earn more from their gift, but they have more going out and they have more risk. I mean, more liability. So I look at that and I said, I don't want that. I can't have somebody like, if I hire a young man and he go on the road with me and he touches one of those women that come to my seminar, now my whole brand on the line for him. And when it come down to my family and my purpose and what God put me here to do, that'll send me into a mindset I don't want to be in. So to mitigate that liability, I don't hire anybody. What I was doing when I toured the country, I'll tell you what I did. I would create the Eventbrite page myself because it's created to be plug and play. You just follow the guidelines. So I went in there with no graphic design background and I would fill in the information, write the copy. I would do it myself. Then I would take that link and I would post it on Facebook, Twitter, Facebook and Twitter. And then when I was going to the city, out of the 300 people that had bought a ticket, I would send an email out through Eventbrite and say, hey, we need a couple of more volunteers. I would say they're thinking I'm coming with a team. They don't realize when they write in to be a volunteer, they my whole staff. So when we get there, I got 12 volunteers that met me 2 hours, 3 hours before the door is supposed to open. They don't know if 3 or 4 of them are on my staff. And they just know they're a volunteer, but they don't know if anybody else is a volunteer. And I talk to the whole group of 12 and I can say, hey, you two run the door. Hey, you two be the, ushers showing people where to sit. Hey, you two work this book table. You two work this book table. Now everybody employed. Me being a former thief, me being a former criminal, I understand that 99.9% of these people not going to steal from me on the very first day working with me, because you got to scope the scene. You got to plot and plan the scene. If they work with me every event, they could see the holes and then know where they could steal. But on the first day, you just getting in, you getting comfortable. And so that was the wisdom that God gave me to where now I had 0 out-of-pocket expenses. And I didn't have to worry about booking flights, booking hotels. The people that will work the event met me in the city. And so this is little stuff that I started to then teach other people who wanted to be speakers and authors and life coaches.
Dang, man, that's amazing. That's amazing right there, bro. And so when you finally got to that point where you had made $1 million, you were a 7-figure earner. First of all, what did that feel like for you internally? And then what was one of the first things that you did externally?
Now, when I made my first $1 million doing what I do, it took like 3 years because it was like 250, then it was 450, then it was 450. So now I've made over 1 million. So
Gotcha.
that I didn't really feel it the same. Like I was just shocked because when I was maybe 25, I said to myself, I'm gonna make $100,000 in a year, 1 year. And at that time I was making 20,000 a year. And I'm like, how am I gonna get to 100,000? And I had no idea how it would happen. And I didn't know serving my purpose and using my gifts without being a salesman, without being a snake oil salesman, could earn me a full living like that to take care of my family. Now, when I made $1 million in 1 year, that's when I really felt like, wow, this is the culmination of all of the sacrifice, all of the just me being diligent, me being focused. And it's finally come to a point to where it's paid off. Like this is real. Like you can work for yourself with God as your boss. You can work alone with zero staff, and you can earn 7 figures without leaving your house if you tap in to the message for you and your brand. And money does not have to be your motive. Because to me, I don't chase money. I don't chase money. Money chases me. I chase purpose. And you can attest to this. I don't know if you remember how I said it, but when we were talking about the funnel system, and we were talking about adding a funnel, and money came up in there. Do you recall what I said to you about money?
I mean, you said it. I remember you. I don't know if this is what you wanted me to say, but I remember you saying that, like you was already making too much money.
That's what I told you. I told you, I said, bro, I already make too much money and I don't need to add a funnel because I know it's going to take my income up times 10 and I'm not ready to do that. And I told you, I said, I don't want any more money right now. I'm not at that place because for me, and that sounds stupid to a lot of people because they like, oh, money got to be the goal. But for me, and I said this on stage in South Africa when I was 29 years old, and I was just talking from the top of my head and the spirit was flowing. And I said, don't chase money, chase purpose, and the money will chase you. And people will pour out into your bosom. As the good book says, when you give, it'll be given. So like each month, my audience, my supporters, they will send me just blessings. And they know that I'm not asking for anything. I'm not asking for any, donations. They know that. And they could see that the Lord has blessed me. They could see what I've created, but yet they still bless me for whatever reason. And I just believe it's because when you are honest and you operate with integrity and you serve and you over deliver, you undersell and then you over deliver. So right now I'm teaching my students on the academy how to create an online course, and online courses have earned me 7 figures. So more than $1 million. Right now, this weekend, which is going to be past when this happened, but I only doing this for my people on my academy. Right now, they are buying the pre-order for $9.97. Most people think that's a sales tactic. Most people think, oh, if you're giving away for $9.97, that's all it's worth. No, I could show you the receipts that online courses earn millions, and I'm giving away for $10 to say thank you to my audience. And so that's what I believe, that we have to get to a place to where it's not all about money. And I'm looking at it because I just did another launch that the pre-order was $97. And 500 or 600 students signed up at that $100. And this course could be even more, a bigger return on investment, and it's $10. I'm selling for $10 until Monday. But that's what I mean. And I share this to say, I believe more people will be more fulfilled in their business if money is not the motive. If being a blessing and changing lives and impacting people is the motive, that the money will come, that money will chase you, money will be poured out into you, and people will look to bless you, and you don't have to just focus on the bottom line. But see, this does not make sense to a carnal mind. It'll only make sense to somebody who is called by the Most High, who understands that we have to be humble and lowly at heart. But that does not mean insecure. It does not mean that you devalue yourself. It means that you are humble yet hungry. You have humility, but humility also produces confidence. When you know who called you, where you going, and why you being sent. That right there changed everything for me.
Yeah, dang, that's so powerful right there. And cool. And as we end, man, I want to make sure that that I'm able to just provide optimal value, that we're able to provide optimal value. And so since this is your visionary podcast, and the purpose of this podcast is to help people, find their purpose and create a vision for their life, I want you to kind of give like a minute or two just explaining, how you feel a person can find their purpose and create a vision for their life.
Man, that's one of the greatest questions that people ask themselves every day. But to be honest with you, my answer is always to find a way, find somewhere, somehow that you can serve. And I believe that your service most often will come from your mistakes or your pain, something that you have done to the world or something that the world has done to you. Birth something in you that then you are able to give back and help other people avoid the pitfalls that you fell into. And so for me, it's really all about not looking for money, but looking for an opportunity to serve and just being in the place and being willing to use your natural gifts. And one thing that I noticed with everybody I talk to in coaching is everybody says, I like to help people. That I've never met a person in coaching, in my coaching session, that said, I don't like to help anybody. I always ask people, what's one of your passions? Everybody says to help others. So that's what lets me know that God created us to lift one another up and for each of us to serve. Somebody can see, somebody can hear, somebody could talk, somebody could walk, somebody could run, somebody could draw, somebody could paint, somebody could build. And then as the world gets bigger, everybody has their gifts, but it's all for us to create an ecosystem to where we're all serving each other and everybody is being blessed. Everybody's being paid for their gifts. And there's room for everybody because the world is so big. And that's why we were all spread out from the Tower of Babel. So I feel like every single person can use their natural gifts to live a life of purpose, and they can be blessed by doing so, whether it is what they earn from their gift or what is given into their bosom for their willingness to be a servant.
Awesome. Yeah. That's invaluable advice. And it makes me think about, I think it was a pastor. I was listening to a sermon. I think it was T.D. Jakes, where he was talking about how God doesn't make chairs and desks. He makes trees. He provides the resources, and the human beings, they then use their God-given gifts to create the chairs because they're gonna, provide value for other people. Right. And so, all that to say what you just said is like we all have our gifts, and we all have like reasons for our gifts and, kind of assignments, if you will. So that's super powerful, brother. And I'm inspired by this, man. I hope everybody listening is inspired as well. So thank you again for joining on today. And let the people know where they can get in touch with you and watch your videos, see your content, get your books, all of that.
Whatever social media, except for TikTok, that's not my style. TikTok, I don't think I ever be on there, and I don't really use LinkedIn either, because it's entrepreneurs on there, but it's a lot of corporate people, and I'm not corporate. So I'm on Instagram and I'm on YouTube the most, in a very fun and friendly way, just answering questions from my audience, and then Instagram sort of, and then Twitter. But and then of course my website is TonyGaskins.com. But to get everything that I'm learning, as I learn it, I'm teaching it. All of that is on TonyGaskinsAcademy.com.
Tony Gaskins, there it is, and the link is in the picture if you're watching. And before you go, last thing, brother, I want you to talk about mymentor.life, because it's something. It was a blessing for me. It's how I met you. But it's also been a way for me to help other people, because I have an account on there. I am a coach, and I coach on the subjects of personal power, business, and positivity. And so I've been able to just meet some amazing people and really, just help serve my purpose, which is to help people find happiness in their struggle. So talk a little bit about that, bro.
Well, mymentor.life, that was birthed from me being a coach every day and not having enough hours in the day. And I would always have people that would write me and they would say, "Hey, Tony, do you know a life coach in New York City?" And I would always think like, well, I certify life coaches, meaning I train life coaches, because certification isn't required, but I train life coaches through TonyGaskinsAcademy.com, but I don't know everybody's name and where everyone lives at. So I was like, I need to create a system, like a site, to where a person can go there to this site and they can pick the category or pick the price point or pick the location. We remove the location because the sessions aren't in person. They're virtual, audio or video. But that's where it came from. And I had the idea probably 2013, 14, 15. And then we started building it in like 2018. And then in 2020, January 2020, it was ready to go live, and it went live. And I think today, we're going towards 700 coaches. And I remember the team that was building it, they had the monthly cost for mymentor.life at like $299 a month, because they were looking at it like, if you're a life coach and this is your business and you're under this umbrella and you're being marketed to millions of people, to spend $300 a month on your business is not a big investment. That was their mindset, but they come from a different walk of life, different experiences. I took and made the monthly membership cost $19.99. And the reason being is because I didn't want it to break anybody who wants to help, who wants to serve. So that if a person doesn't get a single session because of whatever reason, someone doesn't like their bio or they just coach in a category that's not popular right then, they spent $20. That right there changed everything. Put them in the poorhouse. But if they got booked 10 times, if they got booked one time, they made their money back and had a little bit of profit, because the minimum price is $25 on there. But if they got booked 10 times, now it's good profit and they're serving the world. They're helping others. And that's why I created it. So yes, Krishna, I'm glad you signed up on there. And it was crazy to me when you told me you were getting booked, because it's no special promotion. It's no like, we just promote your page. We promote the entire site. And then the people come and they go through all the pages, and you're like page 30 something. So that told me that people really going through these pages looking. So, congratulations for you for having the abundant mindset to invest in yourself in that way. And I hope it continues to be a blessing. And to anybody else out there that feels like you want to serve and you want to help, then take a life coaching training. And then when it's affordable, join mymentor.life with the hopes, I hope, that you'll get some bookings and you'll be able to serve your purpose.
Yeah, there it is, man. Yeah. So again, everybody, thank you for tuning in today. Tony, my brother, thank you for joining in and giving us an hour of your time, man. I'm looking forward to everything that's to come. And till next time, my brother.
Thank you. Bless you. Thank you for having me.
Peace and love, everybody.
Hey guys, thanks for watching this video. If you'd like to see more, click the videos next to me or visit yourvisionarypodcast.com. I also offer one-on-one coaching on topics of business, personal power, and positivity. If that interests you, head over to mymentor.life/Christian Brown. I hope to hear from you soon. Peace and love.